Did you know that the Lord's Supper was not meant to be an eternal ritual within the church, but a prophetic sign linked to a specific time in history? That's right. Stay until the end and I'll explain it to you now. Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper on the last Passover before the cross. He takes the bread and wine and says, "Do this in remembrance of me." In remembrance of what? Of the body that would be given up and the blood of the new covenant. The Lord's Supper was not just a beautiful symbol, it was a prophetic announcement that the old system was ending and the new covenant was beginning. In 1 Corinthians 11:26, Paul explains something very important. Every time you eat this bread and drink this cup, you are proclaiming the Lord's death until he comes. The temple was still standing. Sacrifices were still being made. There was a transition between covenants. The Lord's Supper served as a sign that the true sacrifice had already taken place, even before the old system officially fell. The supper had a time limit, and it pointed to an event that was about to happen in that generation, the coming of Christ in judgment and the consummation of the new covenant. In the year 70, the temple falls, the system ends, Jerusalem is destroyed. So there is no more altar, no more sacrifice, and no more Levitical priesthood. When the temple was destroyed, the sacrificial system ended for good. That is why there was no longer any need for rituals to remember the sacrifice, because the sacrifice had already been fully accomplished. The judgment on Jerusalem in the year 70 was the return of Christ in judgment of an old system for the beginning and consummation of the new covenant. That is why a future return makes no sense, because everything Christ came to do, he did. He put an end to an old covenant that was based on the law, sacrifice, the temple, and the Levitical priesthood, and established a new covenant that is based on grace, communion, and the kingdom established within us. This does not mean that communion is over, quite the contrary. Today, we no longer live by external symbols, but by a spiritual reality. Christ in us, shared life and relationship, not ritual. John 6:48, I am the bread of life. The true supper is not bread and juice, it is living in love, in consciousness, and in unity. In any case, the supper was instituted within Passover, and Passover was Jewish law. And the law said in Exodus 12:43, no foreigner shall eat of the Passover. The stranger could only participate in the Passover, the supper, if he was circumcised and converted to Judaism, and that was a Mosaic regulation. Nothing against those who expect a future return, just clarifying that the supper was Jewish.